Right, g'day traders. Welcome to a wrap up of Monday, the 10th of September. So basically, this is the first week where hopefully the traders really start to come back and get into it. I'm talking about the US and the European traders after they've had their summer break. So typically, their summer break ends at the end of August. So we did have last week, but last week there was a public holiday. So traders, when they do come back, this tends to be the week where they all start really coming back, and hopefully we'll see the volume really increase. In saying that, we had a day that started off, very slow. Price action was very, very tight towards the end of the day, but we did have a sell-off. You can see this particular candle here. This is where we started to sell off, and I'll bring that up in a sec. But what happens when you're sitting at the highs of a chart? So here we're at the highs of a couple of years. It doesn't matter whether it's yearly highs or even just some sort of monthly highs. Even back here, you're in a situation where it doesn't matter what time of the year it is. Markets, when they're at their highs, they tend to really slow down. It's not until you get some sort of retracement where price action will start to increase. So we're getting a little bit of a retracement now. So hopefully that will pick up price action a little bit. Really encourage it to try and get down here and even get underneath these sort of levels, and the markets will pick up, and some good trading will come back. But that's the situation on the daily chart at the moment. Just to bring over the 15-minute chart. I've got some of these lines on here, just some lines that I look at. I'll just mark significant support and resistance areas. So, what we're looking at here is about a week and a half of data. So we're sort of stalling, and you can see the market really stalling once they sort of broke out. If I kind of, actually, I'll scroll in a little bit. So, yeah, there we go. I just want to include this high here. So the markets head towards that high. They break that high. They got a real flurry through that particular area, and they'll get a push through and get some real momentum. Once that momentum slows, you can see then the market's very much got into a bit of a range, and it struggles to really push higher. On the upside, it is going to be a struggle. All of a sudden, it released that pressure. It started pushing, coming down. You can see it's bounced, almost to the tick off that previous high. It's then managed to push back down through it. So if we come back up a little bit here and see some sort of try and use this area as resistance and push lower, that'll be a good sign for potentially getting some sellers in and see if we can get these markets to retrace a little bit. So as far as looking at the daily price action, you've got the 5-minute chart here. And let me start with the 1-minute chart going over here. You can see just as far as looking a bit at the price, we hit one power point in the morning session. We didn't hit our second power point until 2:45 in the afternoon. A very slow day, but then right at the end of the day, as far as today's action is concerned, you got some really quite volatile movement here. It's nothing massive, but in comparison to the day, it certainly had a little bit of a sell-off. To show you on the 5-minute chart, go through a few things. It's sort of a better way to look at it because it's a little bit more compact. The price action, seems though today was quite tight. So if you imagine, this morning you saw we got this really tight pre-market data. Leading up till today, it was likely to be slow. There was no major news announcements. Pre-market was slow. It's also on Monday. First day of the week, last day of the week always typically tends to be slower days anyway. And the market tried to push higher a few times. If it was going to keep on going higher, it was going to be a very slow day, and all it was going to do was grind. The only way to get some action is when it pushed down, and that's sort of when it started breaking down. That's when it got its momentum. But it came down here. It tried to push lower. Sort of left a bit of a pivot point here. If the market comes back and attacks that sort of area and you see all the other markets coming down, that'd be a great area for the sell-off. But the fact of the matter is it didn't come at that point. Here's the same sort of pivot, but on the upside, this area here. So the markets come up, come back. You see it comes back at it. And we're watching this particular area when we're live in the trading room, and you're watching it. And some of the markets were trying to push out higher. The Dow Jones was trying to go higher, but the Russell especially, and definitely the Nasdaq, were really sort of resisting. I couldn't get that word from it. Really resisting the sellers, and as a result, it just didn't have any momentum. In fact, it didn't have other markets behind it. In fact, it's trying to go higher or past yearly highs. It just didn't have any momentum to push through, and it popped up for a little bit there and made a little bit of a double top. But you can see it's just never got through that particular area and really got going on the upside, even though it looked like it was trying to go there. But today was actually quite a bizarre day. The Nasdaq spent all day really trying to push lower. It's even at this area here when the ES was at its highs, the Nasdaq was sitting at its lows, and there's sort of this real contradiction between some of the markets. And as a result, it's difficult to sometimes read what direction the market wants to do. But it became a little bit more predictable towards the end of the day. I want to point out sort of two areas. It's this sort of bit of a pivot point here and this bit of a pivot point here. So this pivot here, the markets came up, made a bit of a double top. It's failed to go higher. It's come back at it, and you can see it's come back at it. The other markets weren't really attacking this same sort of area. They were all just sort of hanging here. No one was really pushing down lower. As a result, it's not able to push any lower, and sort of the buyers have come back in. But this time here, when it came at this sort of pivot here, and you can see when it's broken this pivot here, this is basically where the sellers have really taken over and pushed lower. If you go back and look at the other markets, the Dow Jones and the Nasdaq, we're all breaking through this area really quite well. So the Dow Jones, which was earlier on the upside, had completely changed its tune and was now breaking through this pivot well before the ES was, which just really represents a change in direction, change in momentum, and indicated that this market's kind of trying to go down. The Nasdaq, of course, it was pushing lower as well because it was on the downside all day anyway. And the Russell, well, it wasn't breaking this area yet, but it was hanging around. It looked like it could possibly go lower. So you'd say that this particular area, while it's, for me, wasn't a particularly great tradable area, just because price action was previously so tight, and you just wonder whether the area is really going to work. It's still, and I guess it's a little bit in hindsight, it's a bit of a particular area that the markets were going to go lower when you look, especially when you look at the other markets, and the other markets are really good for helping provide that direction or bit of an indicator of where the market's heading. Like I said earlier on, very hard to gauge it because they're really sort of going in opposite directions. But it looked quite possible that, unlikely I should say, that it wasn't going to go higher because all their marks weren't going. Then coming down here, they weren't all breaking down. But then all of a sudden, everything changed in this particular point, so they're all together pushing down, and that's when they eventually got that push through. So overall, the day's action, quite tight, and then just that little bit of push down right in the last sort of 30-60 minutes of the day. So hopefully coming back on Tuesday, we're seeing these markets retrace. We're seeing them make a little bit of a swing low down here. So look at it here, it's made a swing low, popped up, it's pushing through it again. Like, really want to see these markets keep on pushing down and come down and put some pressure on that 1424 area. Again, sorry, it's pushed through 1424, come back and use as resistance and push lower from it is what I mean. That would be go a great way to helping get these markets pick up a bit of momentum and increase the price action. So that's a wrap up for Monday. We'll be back on Tuesday.